Hello and welcome to week 3 of MLS Fantasy. I'm Jake, and as always, this is MLS Fantasy Analyst. Let's go over who hit and who didn't in my tier list for week 2. First, let's talk about a couple duds from last week. We have Anthony and Tafari, who both only got 2 points and did not even increase in price, so I definitely got those ones wrong. There's a few players whose price still rose but did not have very good points. That would be Williamson, Herbers, and Seeley. I had more hits than misses last week, so let's go over the hits. Alba, Reagan, Heel, Messi, and Aliu all did really well. Now the category called the I Told You So's, Bono, Zimmerman, some of the RSL mids like Pablo Ruiz, Mihailovic, none of them played very well at all, so they were deserving of that F tier. And of course my misses, I had a couple glaring ones, namely Suarez, who got 2 goals and 2 assists, so did not deserve F tier, and Carlos Andres Gomez from RSL did really well. Let's review the chart from week 1 and then go over the chart from week 2. If you remember, goalies had the lowest average, forwards had the lowest amount of people over 8 points, but they had the highest average, mainly because of Benteke with 21 points, 22 points, something like that. Defenders had the most people, but a slightly lower average. So remember this chart as I go over and make it bigger again. Woo! Too big. All right, so this is for weeks 1 and 2. I changed the criteria a little bit to be 7+ points instead of 8+ points. So that will affect things a little bit. But goalies, there were only 3 goalies that are still averaging 7+ points, so that's down a lot. The top 10 average is also down. Defenders are still holding strong at a pretty high number, and their top 10 average is still holding pretty high because there are several teams that have held at least 2 shutouts for the first 2 or 3 games. Midfielders dropped a little bit, which surprised me, and forwards surged. They have even a higher top 10 average, and there's even more of them. So it's pretty interesting. Obviously, it's only the first 2 weeks. It's hard to make conclusive judgments, but I'm thinking that forwards are definitely going to be more viable this year. I'm assuming that after a couple clean sheets don't happen, after 5 weeks or so, defenders will start to drop a little bit. I think there's still some forwards that have scored in both games, or at least 2 of their 3 games so far. So I'm thinking that forwards might drop a little bit. I'm thinking mids might rise again, but right now this is what it's looking like. So it's really interesting to me. All right, let's get to the picks. So as always, the picks are based on mainly how many points I think the players are going to get, but also it's still very early in the season, so it's also going to be based on how much increase in value I think the players are going to get. As always, players are going to increase in value depending on how they've done last week, and then a slowly decreasing effect of how they've done the last 3 weeks. There are all single game weeks this week. Houston has a bye, and they have 4 mil scrubs in every single position, so feel free to choose from them. And here are the teams that have CONCACAF Champions Cup midweek, and they're going to have this midweek and the midweek after this. So they're really getting congested schedules here over this weekend. So watch out for that. We've got Philadelphia, Orlando, New England, Houston, Columbus, Cincinnati, Nashville, and Miami. All right, let's start with the keepers. First, we're going to start with the only S-tier pick, and that will be Sean Johnson this week. Sean Johnson has had 2 shutouts already, which is very surprising, 2 away shutouts even. And they're playing Charlotte in Toronto. So I think he's got one of the best, if not the best, chance of a clean sheet this week. He's also the first game, so you can do a keeperoo if you want and or have the money for. Next, we have Brad Guzan from Atlanta. He's going to go into B tier this week. He had a penalty save last week, so he is likely to go up in price because he had some good points last week. However, he is playing for Atlanta. Atlanta isn't super known for their defense. They are playing New England. New England does have a midweek game, so they may be tired, might not be able to put up points against Atlanta. It's in Atlanta, so that's why I'm putting Guzan in B tier this week. A couple more entries into B tier are Schulte and Coronel. They both have good defenses. They are both playing at home. but they are both playing teams that are more than capable of scoring, so B tier this week. Galese is home against Minnesota, but Orlando just really hasn't shown very much as far as defense or offense goes this year, so I'm putting Galese into C tier. Zach McMath. McMath is going to go into A tier this week. They're playing at home against Colorado, which is a rivalry game, so that's a little hard to predict, but at home, RSL has had decent defense in recent memory. Last week, McMath's best defender was a cumulonimbus cloud, so we'll see how RSL can defend without 3 to 5 inches of snow. Hugo Lloris. If he is finally thawed out from the RSL game, then he's going to go into B tier. They're playing Sporting Kansas City, who has had a pair of 1-1 draws. I think that they have a decent chance of a shutout. And yeah, LAFC's at home. I think it's a solid B tier pick. Daniel is going to go into the A tier pick, mainly because he is the cheapest starting goalkeeper pick right now that Blake and Fry are going to be back, so Semla and Thomas aren't going to be playing. They are playing Vancouver. Vancouver did not look very good last week. Vancouver might play better. I'm assuming Vancouver at some point is going to play better. But right now I'm thinking Daniel at San Jose might not be a bad pick, especially if you want to put him on the bench and do a keeperoo. Celentano is going to be a B tier pick. They are playing at home, but they do play midweek for CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they're playing DC, who has been able to score loads. We'll see if Benteke is back or not. Hopefully he'll be back. He's a fun player to watch. Last but not least of the keepers is Drake Callender from Miami. He is going to go into A tier, surprisingly, this week. They're playing at home. Miami has had a surprisingly good defense, but Montreal has shown the ability to score. But I think that Callender has a decent chance for a shutout there. So it'll be interesting to see Josef Martinez back in Miami to see if he can create some sparks there. All right, next we've got Wiley and Lennon for defenders. They're going to go into B tier. They usually get a lot of good points as wingbacks getting up into the attack. Atlanta is playing a tired New England team in Atlanta, but last week they didn't show very much, so that's why I'm putting them in B tier this week. Hedges from Austin. He is going to go straight into B tier as well. He's playing for a poor Austin team so far, but he's been getting 5.5 points on average a game, and they're finally playing at home. I think Austin might actually show up, and they're playing St. Louis at home. So I think Hedges, he's getting decent bonus points, so I think he's a decent pick this week. Montreal defense. They've had good scores so far, but this week they're playing Miami in Miami, even a rotated Miami. I'm not high on their chances. I'm putting them in F this week. We've got Malanda and Privet, still very cheap. Price rise is still inevitable, but still playing away at Toronto, so I'm going to put them in A tier. Aaron Herrera. I'm putting him in C tier. He has 2 assists already. He's getting good bonus points, but he's playing away at Cincinnati. Miazga and Robinson, I'm putting in B tier. They are playing at home. They're getting good bonus points. Robinson got a goal, but they are playing DC, who's very good on offense so far, and they're playing midweek. I assume that the center backs aren't going to rotate midweek, but still, I think the rest of the team might. So they're going to be in B tier this week. Julian Gressel. This one might surprise you, but I'm going to put Gressel in C tier this week. I don't think they have a very good clean sheet chance against Montreal, though they have been doing well on defense. But Gressel, since Yedlin is gone, is probably going to move back into that right back position until, at least that's what I'm assuming. It's possible that it's not going to happen, but I'm assuming he's going to go back into that right back position until Miami replace him with some young Argentine wonder kid. So I'm thinking he's not going to get as many bonus points, and he hasn't had very many bonus points so far, so that's why he's in C tier. Freire, or if that's how you say it, from Miami is going to go into B tier. They have an outside shot of a clean sheet, like I said, with Gressel. But Freire is getting decent bonus points, better than Aviles. So if you're going to choose between Freire and Aviles, I'd choose Freire. And the last Miami defender, Jordi Alba, I'm going to put in A tier this week. I got a little flack for putting him in S tier last week, but he still did well. Like I said, outside shot at a clean sheet, but I'm putting him there more for the attacking prowess that he's got. I think he's got a good assist shot, and he's also getting about 2 bonus points per game, which is decent for a defender. So I'm thinking that he is going to be an A tier pick this week. Now the Nashville defense, I'm putting in C tier. They are home, but they're playing the Galaxy, so I'm thinking they're not going to have a very high likelihood of a shutout. The NYC defense, I'm putting in F tier. They have had very poor showings so far. It's possible now they're going to go into Yankee Stadium and do really well, but I'm thinking they haven't had very good showings this week, and they're playing Portland, who's shown to be decent on offense. So I'm thinking that they are going to be in F tier this week with very few bonus points to speak of. Ely, I think is how you pronounce it, and Thoralson are both going to go in B tier this week. They are both at home, and they both have decent bonus points. So I'm thinking middle of the road, decent pick. I changed my mind at the last second, and I'm putting Glad and Anelli in the same category. I'm going to put them both in A tier. They are both at home versus Colorado, which is a rivalry game, so we'll see how that goes, but I think they have a decent shutout chance. They both have decent bonus points. Anelli specifically is very cheap, so I think that they're both pretty good picks this week. The San Jose defense, I'm putting in C tier. They are home against Vancouver this week. Vancouver, like we said, hasn't done very well so far in the one game that they've played. But San Jose has just not shown up very well defensively. They don't have very many bonus points to speak of. And if they don't get a shutout, they're likely to go down again in price. So while they might have an outside shot at a shutout, I'm thinking it might not be worth it to pick them this week. St. Louis defense, I'm putting them in F tier. They are away at Austin. I'm thinking Austin might actually show up, at least defensively. And they just have very few bonus points to speak of, so I'm putting them in F tier this week. And last of the defenders, I'm picking the Toronto defense as an A tier pick. They have had 2 shutouts so far away. They're playing at home. They are playing Charlotte. And I think they have a good chance as a shutout. Be warned, if they don't get a shutout, they aren't getting very many bonus points. If Larea is healthy, Larea might be a good go-to pick because he historically has gotten decent bonus points, but he wasn't healthy last week. I'm not sure about his status this week, so just watch that. But they're also the first game, and so they're good bench picks, so you can do a switcheroo and swap in for a scrub to see how well the Toronto players do beforehand. So decently cheap, play first. I think they're a good A tier pick. All right, let's get started with the midfielders. We're going to start with Facundo Torres, who's going to go straight into F tier. He just has not shown up yet. He's only gotten 5 points across 2 games. So I think at some point he's probably going to do well, but until he starts showing that he's going to show up, I'm just not going to go for him. So I think he's an F tier pick this week. Thiago Almada. He is going to go into S tier this week. Last week he got 4 points. But it's pretty hard to ignore that last year he was the absolute best fantasy player of any player in the entire league. So I'm thinking he's going to have a good week himself this week. He's also playing a New England team that plays midweek and is winless so far, 2 losses. So I'm thinking that Almada might just step up and have a really good week this week. Chicago midfielders. I'm putting them in C tier. They're relatively cheap, but they're playing away at Columbus. So I'm not sure if they're going to get many points. You might still get a price right out of Herbers, but that's about it. Harris from Colorado is also going to go into C tier. He is away at RSL. Again, it's a rivalry game, so it's hard to know what's going to happen, but he's getting very few bonus points. He's likely to still go up in price. But I'm not thinking he's going to do super well this week. Always possible, but C tier this week for me. Yeboah is looking like the pick from Columbus in the midfield. He is getting pretty good bonus points. I'm putting him in A tier. He's getting pretty good bonus points so far this year. Last year, he didn't even average 4 points. He averaged under 4 points. But this year, he seems to be doing better, and they're playing home. They're playing Chicago at home. So I think that he's going to have a decent week if the last couple weeks are anything to go by. Click, I'm told his name is pronounced as. His team is doing very well offensively, but they are away at Cincinnati. Even a tired Cincinnati, I think, is going to be good defensively. So I'm putting him in C tier this week. He's getting okay bonus points, but away at Cincinnati, I'm not super confident. Lucho Acosta, as opposed to Brian Acosta. I don't think when I say Acosta, I'll ever be thinking Brian Acosta. But Lucho Acosta, I'm putting him in S tier this week. I was tempted to put him in A tier just because he has a midweek game. You're definitely gonna have to watch lineups. I assume he's gonna start this weekend. He might not play 90, but I still think with his output so far, I think he's definitely still an S tier pick, especially against DC, who's been giving up some goals. Taylor for Miami. I'm putting him in B tier this week. He has scored 2 goals already, but he's not getting very many bonus points. But they're playing Montreal in Miami, so I think there's a good chance of some goals happening in that game. Puig and Paintsil, I'm going to put in B tier this week. They have a very fun attack. They're getting very good points, but they're playing at Nashville this week. Nashville generally has a good defense at home, so I'm going to put them in B tier. Bogusz and Tillman are going to also go into B tier. They're playing SKC at home. I think there's chances of a goal or 2 or 3 in that game. But I'm thinking that they are going to be stealing points from each other. If I had to guess, I would guess one of them does really well and one of them flops. In the first game, Bogusz got all the bonus points, and in the second game, Tillman got all the bonus points. So, yeah, I'm just not sure which one of them is going to hit. Otherwise, they might be a little bit higher. Hani Mukhtar, he might finally be back. But I'm putting him in C tier. They are at home versus the Galaxy. And like I said, he might be back, he might not yet, so we'll have to check lineups. But they are also playing midweek versus Miami in Nashville. So it's pretty. I think it's a risky pick, but there's a lot of upside for Mukhtar. But I'm still going to put him in C tier just because of the risk of him even playing, let alone doing really well. Carlos Heel playing away at Atlanta, but one of those chalk picks that you almost always pick. I'm putting him in A tier this week. They do play in the CONCACAF Champions Cup midweek, and so they might be tired. It usually does not affect Heel's minutes. If anything, he might come off at like 75 or 80, but it might affect the minutes of the players around him. So that's why I'm only putting him in A tier, but he's getting loads and loads of bonus points, so I think he's still probably a pretty good pick this week. Rodriguez from NYCFC. I'm thinking it might just be his breakout week this week, even though he hasn't done very well. I'm putting him in B tier. They are playing Portland at home. I think that, like I said, might just be a breakout week for him, even though he hasn't been doing well. I think he's a slightly risky but good pick this week. Forsberg for the Red Bulls. He has been racking up the bonus points. He has been playing decently well. He's finally at home this week for the first time. I'm going to put him in A tier. I think he's going to have a pretty good week. I think he's a pretty solid, comfortable pick. For Orlando, I think this one is called Araujo. Some of them are Araujo, but I think this one's Araujo. I could be wrong. I'm putting it in B tier. I think this one could be a breakout week this week. He's playing at home versus Minnesota. Hasn't done super well. Decent bonus points. But like I said, I think it could be a breakout week for him. So decent B tier pick. We've got Gazdag and Sullivan. I'm putting them in C tier this week. Gazdag has been getting rotated. They both have midweek games for Philadelphia, and they just haven't been doing super well. They've gotten, not very many bonus points, so C tier pick this week. Moreno from Portland is only getting a few bonus points. He's likely for a price rise because he has been doing decently well as far as averages go, but I'm putting him in C tier. They're away at NYC. It's a decent chance he could do all right. He's been playing okay, but I think he's a kind of risky C tier pick. The RSL midfield, I'm putting them also in C tier. By RSL midfield, I mean Carlos Andres Snomez and Luna. Pablo Ruiz will probably be playing for Ojeda because Ojeda got a red card. And also including Crooks in this conversation. I think one or two of them are going to have a really good game. It's a rivalry game against Colorado at home at RSL, but I mean, which one do you pick? Which one of those 4 or 5 midfielders do you pick? I think any one of them could have the good game. They kind of steal points from each other. So I'm just putting them in C tier because good luck picking which one's going to have the good game. Christian Espinosa. He hasn't had a good showing so far this year, but he had a very good showing last year. He was a very consistent performer last year, so I'm putting him in B tier. He might just have his breakout game against Vancouver. I think he's going to bounce back and have a decent week, so I think B tier is about right for him. Atencio for Seattle. I'm going to be putting him in C tier. He has been getting good bonus points, but with Rusnak and Joao Paulo likely coming back, I think those points are going to get spread out more. So I'm thinking he might not be as good of a pick anymore. Flores from Toronto. He is home versus Charlotte. He's been getting decent bonus points. I think he's a really good value pick this week, so I'm putting him at a solid B tier. And then Gald and Vite, they're at San Jose. So I'm going to be putting them both in B tier as well. I think they're likely to have a bit of a bounce back game. San Jose has led in plenty of goals so far. So I'm thinking one or both of them might have a decent bounce back game. So solid B tier pick. And finally to the forwards. First, we're going to do Giacomakis from Atlanta. He's going to go into B tier this week. He went down in value last week, hasn't done super well so far, but it's their first home game. They do play midweek, but I'm thinking if goals happen in Atlanta, which I think they're going to happen, I think Giacomakis is going to be a part of it. Josef Martinez. I'm thinking that Josef Martinez is going to be a C tier pick. He is away at Miami, but we know that Josef Martinez can score goals in this league. He scored one last week, so C tier, not quite F tier, but still a fairly risky pick. Kuipers, as I believe he is called, from Chicago. He's going to go into F tier this week. He has no bonus points to speak of, and they are playing at Columbus. So, Cucho Hernandez. Cucho is definitely going to go into S tier. He has 2 goals already, tons of bonus points. He does play midweek, but Cucho, I think, is going to do well as always. Benteke. I know that Benteke hurt a lot of people last week when he went out with a mystery knock in warmups, but he's going to be in B tier this week. He is away at Cincinnati, but DC has shown that they can score. And if he's there, if he's healthy, check lineups. But if he's there and healthy, he is absolutely going to go up in price and I think has a good chance to score. Bupenza. He's also going to go into B tier. He is playing Monterey midweek. So that's a pretty heavy game, although I think they are in Cincinnati for that game. But then they are going to play DC this weekend. DC does have a shaky defense. Bupenza got some bonus points last game. So solid B tier pick. Then we've got Musa and Sealy from Dallas. They are playing away at the Red Bulls. I'm going to put them both in C tier. Sealy is probably bench fodder, still probably a cheap price rise option. Musa did score last week, but only had 1 bonus point. So, but I think the Red Bulls have a decent defense, especially at home. So I'm putting the Dallas forwards in C tier. Next, we have the Lionel Messi. I'm going to put him only in A tier this week. I am very tempted to put him in S tier, but he plays the very last game and he might be rotated. So they play midweek in Nashville, and so I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to be playing this weekend against Montreal, even at home. So if he doesn't play, if he doesn't start, then he's a very expensive pick, and there are very few people to swap to if he doesn't start. So for that reason alone, I'm putting him in A tier. I still think he'll start. I don't think he'll play 90, but solid A tier pick. And 11 points per game is pretty hard to pass up. Suarez. Suarez is going to have the same issues as Messi, if not even worse. I think he's probably going to get rotated because he plays midweek. I'm putting him in C tier. I got burned last week when he scored 2 goals and 2 assists, and I put him in F tier. But I'm still only going to put him in C tier. He's not getting many bonus points, and I think he doesn't play. He definitely doesn't play 90. He might not even start this weekend, so I'm putting him in C tier. And I could get burned again. Joveljic is going to go into C tier, which might be surprisingly low for someone who has 2 goals and an assist, but he has very few bonus points to his name. And going into Nashville, I'm just afraid that he's just a poacher that is going to be a goal merchant only, and I'm not sure if there's going to be any goals for Galaxy in that game. Bouanga for LAFC. I'm assuming that he is going to be defrosted and going to be basking in the warm sun of LA against Sporting Kansas City. I think he's going to have a good week. I'm putting him in A tier. I think he's probably going to have a good week as long as he bounces back from that terrible performance in the snow at RSL. Next, we have Oluwaseyi, or however you say his name. I probably butchered it. For Minnesota, they are playing in Orlando, but Orlando has proven that they will let in some goals. I'm going to put Oluwaseyi at A tier. Maybe a goal and an assist off 2 bench appearances might convince his coach that he is good enough to start. But if he plays at all, he's definitely going to get a price rise, so that's why I'm putting him in A tier. Also on Minnesota is Teemu Pukki, but I'm going to be putting Pukki in C tier. I think that while Minnesota still doesn't have Reynoso, they're going to have a hard time having firepower, even though Orlando proved that they can have some goals scored against them. Going to Orlando doesn't sound like a very good chance for Minnesota to be getting tons of goals because Minnesota obviously doesn't have the same firepower as Inter Miami does. Teal Bunbury for Nashville. Even though they're playing at home, I'm going to be putting him in F tier. He has no bonus points to his name. He has 1 goal off a penalty, so that just is not enough to give me very much confidence in Bunbury or the Nashville offense. Chankalai and Vrioni. They are both going to go into C tier. Neither one of them has inspired too much confidence yet. It'll be interesting to see how Nashville rotates with their midweek games. So I think one of them could have a good game. They're playing Atlanta. That game could just well be a shootout. Lots of goals in it, but it's hard to tell who's going to do well, hard to tell who's even going to start, so C tier. Bakrar for NYCFC. He is also going to go into C tier. At home versus a poor defense of Portland might just inspire some life in the NYCFC forwards, but so far they just have not impressed yet, so I'm going to still put him in C tier until they show me otherwise. Vanzier and Manuel, if that's how you pronounce their names, they are both going to go into B tier. It is their first home game. Neither of them have had great performances yet. They only have very few bonus points, but I think at home versus Dallas, one of them at least is going to have a very good game. Muriel and Maguire for Orlando. I'm going to be putting them both in F tier. Neither one of them has done very well at all so far. Maybe one of them will inspire a good performance at home versus Minnesota, but they have been rotating halves in preparation probably for Tigres midweek. So I'm not sure if which one's going to start, if either one is going to play even 60 minutes, or if they're going to rotate halves like they did last. The Philly forwards, I'm putting them in C tier. It is unclear which of them are healthy. It is unclear which of them are going to play very well, and they play midweek versus Pachuca. So I'm just not sure which of one of them to pick, if I even wanted to pick one of them. Anthony and Asprilla for Portland. They are away at NYCFC. If you can guess which one of them might just sneak a goal for Portland, go for it. But neither of them are inspiring very much confidence. They've both got goals, but they aren't getting very many bonus points, and I think NYC is going to have a decent defensive game. But Portland can score. I'm still going to put them in F tier. Chicho Arango for RSL, 2 goals and an assist are not a bad haul at all. I'm going to put him in S tier. He's playing at home versus a rival in Colorado, and I think he might just be able to keep his good form going, and he's averaging a lot of points, so I think he might just have another good game. Next is the San Jose forwards. They have very few bonus points to speak of. I'm going to be putting them in C tier this week. If I had to guess, I would guess that one of them is going to score against Vancouver, but good luck guessing which one. Morris and Rui Diaz. I'm putting them in F tier. Neither of them has shown up in a big way yet, and away at Philly might not be the best chance to do that, although Philly does play midweek for CONCACAF Champions Cup, but I'm still not very high on Morris and Rui Diaz yet. Adeniran for St. Louis. I'm putting him in B tier. 2 goals in 2 games is a very good start. I do worry a little bit that he's going to be splitting points with Klaus somewhat. They play in Austin, and Austin just shut out Seattle. Austin, I mean, so far hasn't looked very good offensively, but defensively, especially at home, I think they're a decent shout. So I'm a little worried about Adeniran, but he's definitely going to be going up in value because of his recent performances. He's still decently cheap, so I think he's a solid B tier pick this week. And finally, we have Insigne from Toronto. I'm putting him at a solid B tier pick. I think his matchup is very good at home versus Charlotte. He did come off at halftime last week, so I'm a little worried about that. We'll have to see what his health is like, see what updates come that way. But I'm thinking that, I mean, Insigne had a worldy of a goal, but he's not getting very many bonus points. But he also wasn't getting bonus points because he only played a half. So he's just a little bit up in the air, but I think his matchup is good. If he plays 60 or more, I think he's a decent pick. And that is my tier list for week 3. Let me know who I missed or who I misplaced. Let me know if there are any injuries or suspensions that I missed. I try to keep track of everything that I can, but there's always a few that slip through the cracks. This is by no means a comprehensive list. If there are people on here that you wish were on here, let me know. But I obviously can't go through every single player in the league, or else we'd be here for hours. So this is just the people I think were most relevant to this week. As always, make sure to watch lineups to make sure that your players are starting. Please join my league in fantasy. It's called MLS Fantasy Analyst Friends. It's free and open. And always remember to like, subscribe, all those things, push all the buttons, comments, and yeah, happy picking. Good luck.